If you live somewhere with a short growing season like Zone 5 here in Denver, and you're dreaming about a big tomato harvest, there's one thing you need to understand before you touch a seed packet. It's all about the countdown. Because if you're starting tomato seeds in May, I'm going to say this gently. You're not early. You're not getting a jump on the season. You're starting the race after everybody else has already left the parking lot. Now, can you still grow something? Maybe. But if your goal is a real harvest before the season runs out, May is usually too late to start tomatoes from seed. May is not the starting line. In Zone 5, May is when your tomato plant should already be getting ready for the real garden.
And here's where beginners get trapped. Hey, the weather finally feels decent in May. The sun comes out, the garden centers are full, the seed racks are still sitting there looking all optimistic. And your brain says, perfect, time to start tomatoes. Nope. That's how people end up with teeny tomato plants in July, green tomatoes in September, and then a frost warning shows up like a landlord with bad news. Tomatoes are not instant plants. They need a runway. You don't start them when the garden is ready. You start them early enough so they're ready when the garden is ready. That's the whole game.
In Zone 5, your tomato timeline is built backwards from your outdoor planting window. For a lot of Zone 5 gardeners, that transplant window lands somewhere around mid to late May. Now, your exact date depends on your location, elevation, microclimate, nighttime temperatures, soil temperature, and whatever nonsense spring decides to throw at you that year. Because spring does not care about your garden plan. Adorable, right? Yeah. The key is this. Tomatoes are warm season plants. They don't like frost. They don't love cold soil. And if you put them outside too early, they can stall before they ever really start growing. So, the mistake is not waiting until May to plant tomatoes outside. That part is usually smart. The mistake is waiting until May to start tomato seeds indoors. One is patience, the other is garden sabotage wearing gardening gloves. So let's build the timeline backwards, because once you see the countdown, the mistake becomes obvious. If the goal is to transplant in mid to late May, then the plant has to be hardened off before that. That means April has to build the seedling. And that means the real starting gun usually goes off in late March or early April. Let's walk through it visually.
If you live somewhere with a short growing season, like Zone 5, and you're dreaming of a massive harvest, then you have to know one thing. It's all about the countdown. Timing is everything. And tomatoes are not especially forgiving about it. Shocking. I know. Plants with opinions. So it's May. The sun is finally out, it's getting warm, and every part of your brain is probably yelling, "It's time to plant tomatoes!" Which is understandable. The sun comes out once and suddenly we all think we're professional farmers. But is May really the right time to be putting tomato seeds in the soil? Well, if you want a real harvest, May usually isn't the starting line. It's actually much closer to the finish line for your plant's indoor growing phase. Starting seeds this late is like trying to win a race when everyone else has already left the parking lot. You can still run, you just shouldn't act surprised when you're chasing taillights. And this is the important difference. Waiting until May to put your tomato plants in the ground can be smart. That's patience. Very mature, very responsible, weirdly rare in gardening. You're waiting for warmer soil, you're avoiding frost, you're giving the plant a better chance outside. But waiting until May to start your tomato seeds? That isn't patience. That's procrastination with potting mix. That is the classic beginner mistake that can wreck the season. Here's the idea you need to hold on to. A tomato plant is kind of like an airplane. It can't just pop up into the sky, despite what the seed packet art emotionally suggests. It needs a long runway to build speed and strength before it can take off. You don't start tomatoes when the garden is ready. You start them so they are ready when the garden is ready. Teeny difference, giant tomato consequences. So let's build this timeline backwards. The goal is to get strong plants into the ground in mid to late May. To do that, they need to be hardened off early in May. That means you need April to build a strong seedling. And that means the starting gun goes off back in late March or early April. That is the real beginning. Not glamorous, not exciting, but neither is staring at green tomatoes in September. So here we are. Late March or early April is when your tomato seeds should be getting tucked into trays under lights, safe inside your house. Basically, tomato daycare, but with more lights and fewer juice boxes. A seed started this early gets the runway it needs. It has time to germinate, it has time to grow its first true leaves, it has time to build a stronger root system, and it has time to become a tough garden-ready transplant. That's the difference between a sturdy young plant and a teeny sprout that's showing up for kindergarten when it should be reporting to work. So let's talk about April proper. Think of April as the construction zone. Hard hats, roots, questionable project management. This is where the teeny sprouts start turning into a real plant. During April, the tomato plant is doing serious work. After those first little seed leaves, it develops true leaves. It starts building roots. It starts developing structure. And the secret ingredient here is strong light. Without strong light, you get those sad, pale, floppy green spaghetti noodles that cannot handle the real world. Technically alive, emotionally unprepared. And no, optimism doesn't fix leggy tomato seedlings. Neither does staring at them harder. I checked. The goal in April isn't to grow a giant tomato plant in your living room. The goal is to grow a compact, stocky, sturdy transplant with a strong stem and healthy leaves. It's about structure, it's about strength, not just size. Now we reach early May. By this point, the plant should be built, stronger, and ready to start preparing for the move outside. That transition process is called hardening off, and it matters. Indoor seedlings have lived a pretty soft life. They've basically been living in a spa with grow lights. Stable temperatures, controlled light, no wind, no blazing sun, and no cold nights. If you just throw them outside into full sun and wind, that's not hardening off. That's plant hazing. Hardening off is basically boot camp for plants. You ease them into the sun and wind so they don't fold in half the first time spring gets cranky. And spring always gets cranky. It has commitment issues, we know. And here's a number to keep in mind. About 55 degrees Fahrenheit. That's generally the minimum soil temperature you want for tomatoes. Tomatoes hate cold feet. Planting them into chilly soil is a great way to make them sit there and pout for weeks. Green, dramatic, and accomplishing absolutely nothing. Patience is your friend here. Annoying, but still true. That brings us to the big transplant window in mid to late May. But remember this, you transplant when the conditions are right, warm enough soil, no ugly cold nights in the forecast. A plant that has been hardened off and is ready, not just because the calendar says May 20th and you got excited. The calendar is a suggestion. The soil is the manager. The garden always gets the final say. Now let's look at what happens when you skip this timeline. The difference is obvious. On one side, you have a plant started back in March or early April. It's sturdy, it's dark green, it has roots, it's ready to grow. On the other side, you have a seed started in May. It's teeny, it's just getting started. Cute? Sure. Useful? Not yet. When the first plant is ready to begin building the harvest, the second one is still waking up. So here's the bottom line. By starting in May, you didn't just miss a few days of sunshine. You missed the entire runway. The plane is still boarding and the season is already taxiing. You compressed the whole season. In a short season climate, that's a huge gamble. Now if you're watching this and it's already May and you're thinking, that's me. Don't panic. Panic is rarely good gardening strategy. Entertaining maybe, useful, no. And definitely don't give up on tomatoes this year. There is a smart move you can still make. Buy healthy transplants from a good local nursery. Home Depot, Lowe's, name your store. That isn't cheating. That's using the calendar like an adult. Look for plants that are compact, green, sturdy, and healthy. Avoid plants that are yellowing, stretched, stressed, or already trying to flower in teeny little pots. That plant isn't ambitious, it's stressed. A good transplant is your express ticket back into the tomato season. No shame, just better odds. So now you understand the timeline, you understand the countdown, but timing is only half the battle in a short season. The other half is choosing the right tomato variety for your garden.
That timeline is the whole reason this Tomato Masterclass exists. Because tomatoes are not just about sticking a plant in dirt and hoping the plant gods are in a good mood. In this series, we're walking through the full system. Timing, variety, soil, transplanting, watering, pruning, and harvest. No magic tricks, no internet nonsense, just the stuff that actually makes the plant perform.
So here we are. If it's already May or maybe even early June and your best move is buying transplants, the next question's obvious. We talked about it a couple of minutes before, but let's review. What should a good tomato transplant actually look like? You want a sturdy, dark green plant. Not yellow, not stretched, not floppy, not flowering too early in a teeny pot like it's having a midlife crisis at 6 inches tall. The best transplant isn't always the biggest one on the shelf. You want compact growth, a strong stem, healthy leaves, no disease spots and no obvious stress. Definitely no plant that looks like it's been abandoned under discount store lighting for 3 weeks. And you know what? Watch out for plants that are already heavily flowering or fruiting in small pots. That can look exciting, but it may be a sign the plant is stressed and rushing reproduction instead of building structure. Bigger isn't always better. A massive, stressed, root-bound tomato plant isn't a flex. It's just a plant that has been waiting too long in a plastic prison. Before tomato seedlings go into the garden, they need the transition period we talked about in the timeline. That is hardening off. And yes, it matters. Indoor seedlings have been living in controlled conditions. Steady light, steady temperature, no wind, no harsh sun. Then people throw them outside for 8 hours and act surprised when they look personally offended. Start them in the shade, protect them from the wind, bring them back in if nights are cold. Slowly increase the time outdoors and the amount of sun. This isn't babying the plant. This is training the plant, because outside isn't a windowsill. Outside plays rough.
Now, if you're watching this in May and you have not started tomato seeds yet, don't panic. But also, don't lie to yourself. For this season, your best move is probably to buy healthy transplants. That's not cheating. That's called using the calendar like an adult. Look for plants that are sturdy, green, compact, and disease-free. Avoid the plants that are, yellowing, stretched, heavily flowering, already fruiting in a teeny pot, or looking like they were grown in a broom closet. And if the plant is a little leggy, tomatoes are forgiving. You can plant them deeper because tomatoes can form roots along buried stems. But don't buy garbage plants and expect miracles. A bad transplant does not become a great plant just because you gave it a motivational speech. Buy strong plants. Start from a position of strength. Your garden has enough problems without you importing new ones in a 4-inch pot. So here's the takeaway. If you start tomato seeds in May in Zone 5, you are not really starting your tomato season. You're compressing it. You're asking a warm season plant with a long growth cycle to make up lost time in a short growing season. Hey, sometimes it works. Usually it disappoints. So, build the season backwards. Start the seeds in late March or early April. Grow strong seedlings through April. Pot them up or repot them if needed. Harden them off in May. Then transplant when the garden is actually ready, not when you are emotionally ready. The garden doesn't care about your feelings. Hey, I know, that's rude, but it's accurate. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about choosing the right tomato varieties for Zone 5, because timing is only half the battle. The other half is picking tomatoes that can actually finish your season. Some varieties are workhorses, and you know what? Some are divas, and some are just seed catalog poetry with roots.